this video, I'm going to show you how to sublet your New York City apartment. Now, subletting your New York City apartment can kind of seem a little bit overwhelming in the beginning, but I promise you it's very, very common and it's really not as hard as it may seem. So first thing I want you to do is check to see in your lease if subletting is allowed, or talk to your landlord or management company to see if it's allowed. Because sometimes even if it's not in your lease, they will give you like written permission to do that, but it should be outlined in your lease as well. So once you know that it is allowed, you can then go on to different websites online to find someone to take over your lease. So this scenario is going to go over if you don't have a tenant to take over your lease. If you already have somebody, you can skip over all this because you might know somebody, have a friend or a colleague or something who could take over your lease. You obviously don't need to pay attention to this. So this is just going to be for people who don't know where to find somebody. So where can you find someone? The most common sites are going to be Lease Break. So that's a website that focuses solely on what it says. People who are breaking their lease and they need someone to take over their lease. So I have used Lease Break. I actually used it as someone taking over a lease. So I was the person coming in to take over the sublet. And I have used it as well when I needed to break a lease and somebody taking over my lease. However, I didn't end up going with a tenant taking over my lease on Lease Break because I found someone else through actually just being a real estate agent. I found somebody. I didn't need to utilize that website for that, but I did take over someone's lease on Lease Break. So I have used it before. This whole website is dedicated to that. So there are so many people that are looking on there to take over a lease for a temporary amount of time. So when I was looking to take over a lease on that website, I took over like an 8-month lease or something like that. So it was under a year, but it was kind of close to a year. But you can find things that are for a shorter amount of time than that. So I don't want you to think that it has to be over 6 months or something like that. If you need someone to take over a shorter lease, people are looking for that as well. Now, Facebook is always going to be another good option because there are a lot of Facebook groups that are dedicated just to this. And also there are some specific neighborhood groups as well where you can post in there too if somebody's looking for like a specific neighborhood. Overall, going to the big Facebook groups that are going to be for people looking for housing, that's going to be your best bet. One thing that I would advise is don't use Zillow or StreetEasy because once they find out that it is a sublet, and they will find out based on how like their algorithm, I don't know how their algorithm works or something, they will take it down or not post it at all. Especially if you're in a building, they're going to know that you're not the owner. So most of the time the rental building locks it, so only the owners of the rental building can post when there's a listing on there. That is just something to be aware of. You're probably not going to be able to post it on a site like Zillow or StreetEasy. Probably not. Let's say you found somebody. So now it's going to be time to draft a sublet agreement. Now, sometimes landlords or buildings have their own sublet agreement that they want you to use. And if so, then you can use that. Just make sure it protects you so that way you're not out money or they can't screw you over in any way. But if they don't have that, you can draft up a sublet agreement. And then you want to kind of figure out exactly like, is the person paying you? Are they allowed to pay the building or landlord directly? And what happens if they don't pay? Who's in charge of that? Is it you or does a liability go straight to them? I mean, personally, I would love to be able to take you out of the equation and have them go directly to the new landlord or the new management company, but that's kind of more of like a lease takeover rather than a sublet. So most of the time you are going to have to be that person in the middle. So you found the person, you got them to sign a sublet agreement. Now you just need to notify your landlord or your building management to let them know that you have this person in place and that they're going to be living in the unit from now on. The other thing that you're going to have to do is to decide how you're going to handle the security deposit. So if this person is going to be paying you the rent every month, you're probably going to want to collect a security deposit from them because the landlord or management company is still going to have your security deposit. I would say that what I typically do in this situation is I collect a security deposit from them, and then at the time that the lease is over, whatever you get back from them, you can then give back to them, or you can give them back the whole security deposit if something happened where it was your fault, not their fault. So I would say that that's probably going to be your best bet. Do collect a security deposit from them if you can. And I would say that you don't really get a lot of pushback on that because most people in Manhattan, especially for a short-term lease, they're a little bit harder to find sometimes. And if they need a short-term lease, they're very willing to do a security deposit. So don't feel weird asking that. I think it's very fair. But I also would say that you would follow the guidelines of what your security deposit was as well. So that's what the security deposit would be when you're going to that person. So, and then I would say just give it back accordingly when that's done. So if they are working directly with the building or with the landlord and it's more of a lease takeover in that situation, then they would be paying the security deposit directly to them. The landlord or management company would give you back your security deposit, but that's kind of a different case scenario. But it could happen. Sometimes that actually has happened to me as well, where I ended up being able to do a lease takeover instead of being that middle person. I've been in a lot of different scenarios in New York City, as you can tell. So I hope that helped you figure out how to do a sublet in New York City. Again, they're very, very common. And I don't want you to be very intimidated because there are so many people looking for short-term places in New York City because it's such a transient city. If you have any questions or if there's anything I missed in this video, please share it in the comments because always I love hearing from you guys.